everyone, welcome back to Actual English. I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 392 and today's topic is Viewer's Choice 7. Well, it's our 7 requested topic and it is pregnancy. So there are tons of things you can talk about when it comes to pregnancy, but I'm afraid we will not be able to cover everything in just one lesson. Let's see, pregnancy. What is there that you can talk about? You can talk about how a baby grows, how a female or a mother conceives, how she gets pregnant. You can talk about so many things. Ovulation is one thing. You can talk about the first, second, and third trimester. You can talk about the weeks, when a mother is due or when the baby is due, when she is going to have her baby, deliver the baby, for example. All right. There are tons of things you can talk about, but we're going to have to leave it up to Mary and Martin with today's topic. So, as always, let's begin with this conversation. It's time for actual talk. So you said that you might be thinking about trying to have children soon. Is that true?
Yeah, it's looking that way. It's about time.
Yeah. It's a pretty exciting time, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's something I'm really looking forward to doing. So, yeah.
What kind of, are you doing any research or how is it different in in your home versus Korea?
I don't know too much detail right now, but the research that I have done has been more based on after the baby is born.
Okay.
Is here in Korea, they have postnatal care centers.
What's that?
So after you have the baby, then you'll go to a center for like a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Or if you're rich, you can go for a month.
Okay.
And someone teaches you how to look after your baby.
Oh, I see.
Which my sister-in-law, she did when she had her first baby.
Okay.
And I find it quite strange. Back home, well, when you have children back home, what would you do?
I feel like it depends on if you have a C-section or not. But I feel like next day, the hospitals are trying to get you out of there. Keep those beds open for the next pregnant woman,
Yeah, exactly that. Whereas here, they go to these centers and people will teach them how to care for the baby. But I find that back home in the West, that's kind of the grandmother's job. It's always about passing knowledge down rather than going to somebody else to find that knowledge.
Right, but information is always changing, and I've heard stories about young moms have this new information, new science, and there's a better way to do it now, or a different way, right? And having huge arguments with either their mom or their mother-in-law about how hot the house should be and how many layers of clothing the baby should be wearing. Should it be sleeping on its side or its back? So maybe it's good that you get to learn from someone who's not your mother-in-law.
It's actually a really good point. Yeah. I might give it a little bit more leeway now.
All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Mary and Martin has helped us out, and they did mention a few things related to pregnancy. Of course, as I did tell you, there are so many things you can talk about when it comes to pregnancy, and it is impossible to cover everything in one short conversation. So let's first of all take a look at what these two mentioned in their conversation. So, Mary began by saying, you said that you might be thinking about trying to have children soon. All right. So, a lot of married couples, some wait until their second year, third year into their marriage to have children. But some couples, especially those that get married at a later age, they plan to have children or they try to have babies or children as soon as possible. The more kids they want, the sooner they will try. So she's saying, you said that. Is it true? I think I heard that you were trying to have babies. Is that true? He says, yes. Yep, it's looking that way. It is looking that way? What does it mean? It seems to be is another way of putting it. This is just a way of him saying, yes, it is true. Okay, we are trying. It's about time. It is about time we had a baby, meaning that they have waited for some time or they've been putting it off to a later time. And he's saying that I don't think we should wait any longer. I don't think we should postpone it any longer. It's about time. It's about time we get it done or we do it right now is what he means by this. And then Mary says it's a pretty exciting time, right? Okay. Yeah, it is. It's something I'm really looking forward to doing actually. So if you're looking forward to doing something, yes, it means that you are really expecting something, you know? You're very happy for this, okay? Or happy to be doing something. He's looking forward to having children, okay? Are you doing any research? She asks. Or how is it different in home versus Korea? So she's asking if he has been doing any research. If he's been looking on the net perhaps, doing some online research, looking for information related to childbirth or pregnancy or having children. And then she says, how is it different in home, meaning your home country, versus Korea? Now, if you say versus is usually used to indicate that figures or ideas or two things are opposed, meaning they are different, okay, from each other. You are comparing the two, making a comparison, okay, differentiating the two. So she's asking, how is it different? How is getting pregnant or having children in your country different from Korea? How is it different? What is the difference? Versus home versus Korea. I don't know too much details, he said. Okay, perhaps you can add about the details right now. But the research that I have done has been more based on after the baby is born. Okay? It's more based on, it is more about what? After the baby is born. Not before, not how to get pregnant, not how to prepare for pregnancy, but he's saying that he's been searching for information or the research that he has done so far is more about, it's more based on after childbirth, meaning after a baby is born. And he says here in Korea, they have postnatal care centers. So we've got a vocab word, and we're going to practice this as a pattern today. First of all, let's take a look at postnatal as a vocab word. Post, P-O-S-T. Post, in most cases, means after. Okay? Pre, P-R-E, means before something, right? So postnatal, you're referring to after birth, or after childbirth, or after delivery. Okay, so postnatal care centers. We're talking about maybe these special care centers for women who immediately go to get special care, especially after they have a baby. So it's special care centers for mothers who have just had babies. These places are called postnatal care centers or postpartum care centers. We'll take a look at that later on in practice, okay? Anyhow, Mary says, what's that? Here he goes. He explains. So, after you have the baby, remember, it's postnatal, post, P-O-S-T, which means after you have the baby. Then, you'll go to a center, like a special care center, for like a week or 2 weeks. Okay, follow along. Or if you're rich, you can go for a month. You don't have to be rich to go for a month. I think it's all your choice. It's your preference. You can stay for a week. You can stay for a month. Some people, I think, not many people, but some do choose to stay for 2 months. But rates are very different. So it depends on where you go, rather. It's not about how wealthy you are. Anyhow, the average, I would say, is 2 weeks. So mothers who just gave birth to a baby stay or go to these centers for a week or 2 weeks, okay? And someone teaches you how to look after your baby. Okay. Look after. That's a pattern for today. Look after means what? To take care of. In this case, look after your baby. So when you go to these centers, they teach you how to look after your baby, meaning they teach you how to take care of your baby. They teach you how to breastfeed. They teach you how to bathe your baby, meaning give your baby a bath. Perhaps they teach you how to put your baby, down, how to hold them perhaps. They teach you a lot of things. They teach you how to make the baby burp after they have their milk. So on and so forth. Anyhow, Mary understands, so she says, oh, I see, meaning I understand. And then Martin says, my sister-in-law, she did it when she had her first baby. She did it, meaning she went to a postnatal care center. And I find it quite strange. He says, I find it quite strange. Okay. So Mary says, why? Why is it strange? Why do you find it strange? Martin answers, well, when you have children back home, once again back home, he's talking about his home country. He says, what would you do? So this question, he's asking Mary. We know what happens in Korea. In most cases, they just talked about when a mother just gives birth to a baby, when she has her baby, she usually goes to these postnatal care centers to get cared for and to learn about how to look after a baby. And then he says, when you have children back home in your country, what do? What do people normally do after giving birth to a baby? She says, it depends on if you have a C-section or not. You can also say, it depends. Okay, whether you have a C-section or not. Let's take a look at C-section, okay? I've chosen that to be one of our patterns for today. C-section, okay, in Korean is 제왕절개. C-section, the C here stands for cesarean section. It's too long to pronounce, so people usually shorten it and just call it C-section. So in some cases, you have to have a C-section, especially if the mother is in danger or the baby is in danger. Some people choose to have a C-section. We'll practice this pattern later on, but remember, this is when they make an incision, meaning a cut in the mother's abdomen, stomach, or uterus to have the baby delivered, to give childbirth, to have the baby. So she says it depends whether you have a C-section or not. Surgical procedure. But I feel that the next day, the hospitals are trying to get you out of there. They try to get you out of there, meaning they tell you to go home. Oh, there's no need to stay in the hospital. You're free to go. Go home. Go. That's what happens in her home country. Okay, why? 2, keep those beds open for the next pregnant woman. Okay, so do you understand what she's saying here? All right. Martin asked her, in your home country, back home, what do people do? What happens after a female or a mother gives birth to a child? And she says, well, it depends. If you have a C-section, it is a surgery, a surgical procedure. You may have to stay in the hospital for a longer period. But in most cases, the hospital, they tell you the next day, go home. We need that bed. We need that room for another mother. So, they need the beds open for the next pregnant woman. Whereas here, he's talking about Korea, Martin says, they go to these centers and people will teach them how to care for the baby. This is what he's mentioned before. We're talking about postnatal care centers. And he says, I find that back home in the West, that's kind of the grandmother's job. It's the grandmother's job. I think it is in Korea as well, but what is he saying is the grandmother's job? It is the grandmother's job in the West to teach them how to care for the baby. So he's saying in the West, people don't necessarily go to these care centers. They usually come home and the grandmothers teach them how to take care of the baby. Okay, it's done the same way in Korea as well, I think. It's always about passing knowledge down rather than going to somebody else to find that knowledge. So passing knowledge down. Just a trickier or more complicated way of saying teaching. Okay? It's about teaching someone rather than sending the mother to a different place to learn from someone else. Right, but information is always changing, she says. Yes. And I've heard stories about young moms, okay, young moms having this new information, and there's a better way to do it now, or rather, a different way, okay? Having huge arguments. Yes, you can have very big arguments, serious arguments with either their mom or their mother-in-law, because we have our differences. We think differently about how hot the house should be and how many layers of clothing the baby should be wearing. So she's saying, in a lot of cases, if you learn from your mother or your mother-in-law, you will have these arguments. You will have your disagreements, okay, about how hot the house should be, how many layers of clothing the baby should be wearing, okay? You will have these differences. Should it be sleeping on its side or its back? You will argue about these things. Now, we'll practice this pattern later on. It's simple. Sleep on one's back, sleep on one's side. It's just a sleeping position. So maybe it's good that you get to learn from someone who's not your mother-in-law, she says. So I think she likes the idea of learning how to, look after a baby at these postnatal care centers. Anyhow, here we go. Martin says, that's actually a really good point. Learning from someone that's not your mother-in-law. And he says, I might give it a little bit more leeway now. Leeway is another word for room, okay? Or especially room for something to grow. You're talking about freedom. The freedom that someone is given to do whatever they want to do. So, yes, we'll go over that word in just a bit, okay? But for now, since that is the end of our conversation, listen carefully to it one more time.
So you said that you might be thinking about trying to have children soon. Is that true?
Yeah, it's looking that way. It's about time.
Yeah. It's a pretty exciting time, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's something I'm really looking forward to doing. Actually, yeah.
What are you doing any research, or how is it different in in your home versus Korea?
I don't know too much detail right now, but the research that I have done has been more based on after the baby is born.
Okay.
Is here in Korea, they have postnatal care centers.
What's that?
So after you have the baby, then you'll go to a center for like a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Or if you're rich, you can go for a month.
Okay.
And someone teaches you how to look after your baby.
Oh, I see.
Which my sister-in-law, she did when she had her first baby.
Okay.
And I find it quite strange. Back home, well, when you have children back home, what would you do?
I feel like it depends on if you have a C-section or not. But I feel like next day, the hospitals are trying to get you out of there. Keep those beds open for the next pregnant woman,
Yeah, exactly that. Whereas here, they go to these centers and people will teach them how to care for the baby. But I find that back home in the West, that's kind of the grandmother's job. It's always about passing knowledge down rather than going to somebody else to find that knowledge.
Right, but information is always changing, and I've heard stories about young moms have this new information, new science, and there's a better way to do it now, or a different way, right? And having huge arguments with either their mom or their mother-in-law about how hot the house should be and how many layers of clothing the baby should be wearing. Should it be sleeping on its side or its back? So maybe it's good that you get to learn from someone who's not your mother-in-law.
It's actually a really good point. Yeah. I might give it a little bit more leeway now.
Okay, today today we've got 3 vocab words, as you see, versus. Let's just take a look at the pronunciation. Versus. It's often written as VS, okay? We're talking about the contrast or alternative. Postnatal. Stress goes right there. Post, as you see, this part means after. A synonym would be postpartum, as I mentioned. So you will often hear postnatal care center or postpartum care center. Antepartum is the antonym, and pre, as I mentioned, before or during pregnancy would be prenatal. Leeway is room to move or to grow. We talked about freedom, so it's space, a synonym for leeway. Okay, quickly, we've got 4 patterns for you, so let's take a look at it. In Korea, a lot of mothers that just gave birth to a baby go to these postpartum or postnatal care centers. They're maternity care centers that women go to. I plan to stay at a postpartum care center for just a week when I have my baby. Okay? You can see I stayed at a postpartum care center for 2 weeks when I had my baby. Okay? If you're talking about the past. Moving on to look after someone or something, which means to take care of something or someone. My mother looks after my son when I have to work, meaning my mother takes care of my son when I have to work. Our next pattern is C-section. As I told you, the C stands for cesarean. C-A-E-S-A-R-I-A-N. Usually it's spelled without the first A. Also as C-E-S-A-R-I-A-N. But this spelling is more common. This is a surgical procedure where they make an incision in the mother's stomach, abdomen, and uterus to deliver the baby. So here we go. I had a scheduled C-section at 35 weeks. So often when mothers have to give birth to a baby earlier than scheduled, they may have a planned or a scheduled C-section. Okay? And finally, here we go. To sleep on one's side, back, or stomach. These are all sleeping positions. Okay? Side, back, stomach. We're talking about that. Sleeping on your side, in particular, your left, is best while you're pregnant. This is something I learned. So they say to a lot of pregnant women, sleep on your left side because it delivers more blood flow and nutrients to the baby, okay, and the placenta. So let's, wrap it up for today's actual expressions and make sure you practice them more on your own.